Okay, here's what's in the box. Of course, it comes with the camera case, comes with a curved surface mount, flat surface mount, the clip that goes into the mounts, an extra battery tray, and of course a Sony Action camera. Here's a Sony Action camera up close. This camera does have a major design flaw in that in order to access the external mic input, you have to open the bottom door there. So if you put this camera in the case, it's inaccessible. But once you open it, you have access to the micro USB in, the HDMI out, the expansion port, and of course, as I stated, the external microphone input, which is basically useless on this camera unless you're holding the camera in your hand and recording. Okay, open the back trap door there. You have the slot to put your battery in and a slot to put your micro SD card, which I currently have a 32 gigabyte card in there. You can put a 64 gigabyte card in there if you choose to do so. Okay, closing the door, you have access to the start and stop button for starting and stopping recording, and also to make selections in the menu. And you hit the next key to start the camera up, and the menu navigation on this camera is very easy. Okay, if you go into the setup and you click the start and stop button, which selects it, the video modes that you have available is 1080 and 60p. You have 1080 and 30p, 720 and 30p, 720 and 60p, 720 and 120p, and that's only for slow motion. Then you have 480 and 30p. The 720 and 60 frames per second is also slow motion only, and you get no sound with the slow motion, which is for the 720 and 120 frames per second and the 720 and 60 frames per second. The only pros that I can come up with is Sony Action Camera, at least for my application purposes, is its ability to record the slow motion shots in 720p by 120 frames per second to give you those nice crisp slow motion shots, and that was the main reason why I bought this camera. Unfortunately, it doesn't record sound when it's in the slow motion mode, but if you use a second camera to record the sound, you can always use that. The sound on this camera is pretty good. It even sounds better than the GoPro Hero 2. And if you're able to plug an external mic and external mic jack, it sounds even better. But the only way that you can use the external mic jack on this camera is that if you actually record by holding it in your hand. Because if you put it in a case or use it for any other mounting purposes, you really can't access the external mic jack because of that bottom door. The steady shot on this camera is pretty good. It smooths out the video, so that's a really cool feature to have. And also this has Wi-Fi, which is also a benefit. As far as the Sony Action Camera cons, at least in my opinion, the 1080p and 60 frames per second doesn't look any better than the 1080p and 30 frames per second. The resolution on this camera, it looks artificial in my opinion. The sky looks too blue, the trees don't look a proper green, just the colors just don't look right. It doesn't look natural to me. It's not crisp. It doesn't look as natural and crisp as it does on the GoPro Hero 2. As I stated earlier, you can't access the microphone input. So if you want to put an external microphone, you have to basically just hold the camera in your hand. Otherwise, if you want to mount this camera, you can't access the external mic input. Now the sound is good on this camera, but it sounds even better when you plug the external mic input in. But also I've noticed that if you remove the front cover of the case, if you're able to do that, it sounds a lot better. Especially if you're putting it on a tripod, which I did, and you'll see in these video examples coming up. Now also another drawback of this camera is you can't mount it on the front of your helmet like you can the GoPro Hero 2. You're pretty much delegated to mounting it on the side of your helmet. For those of you that wanted to use this camera for motovlogging, in my opinion, for motovlogging, I like to see shots straight in front, in my opinion. I'm not really that fond of the picture, from the side of the helmet, but to each his own. That's just my opinion. Also, the waterproof case on this camera is pretty bulky compared to the GoPro Hero 2. Now the camera is small itself, but when you put it in that case, it just makes it so much bigger and bulkier. The Sony Action Camera versus the GoPro Hero 2. In my opinion, the GoPro Hero 2 has much better resolution. It looks more natural. The colors look more true. The GoPro Hero 2 is less bulky in its case compared to the Sony Action Camera in its case. Also, you have the ability to mount the GoPro Hero 2 on the front of your helmet, as where you can't do that with the Sony Action Camera. However, the Sony Action Camera has better sound, and Sony has better slow motion shots with the 720 by 120 frames per second to get those nice crisp slow motion shots, as you'll see in my video examples coming up. And also, Sony has a video stabilizer, so it smooths out the shot, especially if you mount it on your bike or you're using it for motovlogging applications. And battery life is about the same for both cameras, with a duration of about 2 hours. In conclusion, what I really like about this Sony Action Camera, as I stated before, is its ability to record those crisp slow motion shots in 720p by 120 frames per second, and it looks so much smoother and nicer than it does when you slow down video footage in a GoPro Hero 2 in 720p by 60 frames per second. However, the sound on the Sony is a lot better than a GoPro Hero 2, but when you plug an external mic jack in a GoPro Hero 2, it sounds pretty good, as you guys hear in my motovlogs and in this video example. However, the video quality on the Sony, in my opinion, I don't really care for it that much. Like I said, it looks artificial. The colors don't look natural like it does with the GoPro Hero 2. So in my opinion, the GoPro Hero 2 is still the best action camera, at least out of the cameras that I've tried so far. And I've had the Contour, the Drift Ghost, of course the GoPro Hero 2, and the Sony Action Camera. And like I said, the GoPro Hero 2 is the best out of all of those that I've used thus far. I have yet to use the GoPro Hero 3, but for what I hear, they're having problems with those still, mainly due to low battery life on that camera. But if I ever get a hold of that camera, I'll do a review on it, of course. But that's all I have for you guys. So until next time, catch you guys later. Peace! Subscribe to my blog over at CycleCruza.com for tips and great deals. Also, click like on my Facebook page for new updates, and that's facebook.com/CycleCruza1.